My phone rang at exactly 10:37 p.m. on a Tuesday night, interrupting the silence of my home office, where I'd been reviewing client proposals for the past 3 hours. I remember glancing at the screen and seeing "unknown number" flash across it. Normally, I wouldn't answer calls from unknown numbers at that hour, but something made me pick up. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was fate. "Mrs. Westbrook?" The voice on the other end was male, older, with a tremor that immediately put me on edge. "Yes, this is Helena Westbrook. Who's calling?" "Mrs. Westbrook, this is Judge Marcus Thornfield from the Federal District Court. I'm calling about your son, Dylan." My stomach dropped. A federal judge calling me at nearly 11 at night about my son could only mean one thing, and it wasn't good. "What happened? Is Dylan okay?" I stood up from my desk, my heart already racing. "Dylan was arrested approximately 3 hours ago, ma'am. I need to see you tonight, at my residence." His voice cracked slightly on the last word, and I could hear what sounded like genuine distress. "Your son is going to—" He paused. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. "Judge Thornfield? What is Dylan going to do? What are the charges?" "I cannot discuss this over the phone, Mrs. Westbrook. This is highly irregular, I know, but please trust me. Come to my home tonight, alone. I'll text you the address. This is urgent. Your son's future depends on what we discuss tonight." "I don't understand. Why can't we meet at the courthouse tomorrow? Why you're home? What are the charges against my son?" "Please, Mrs. Westbrook, just come, and come alone. Don't tell anyone about this call, not yet." The line went dead. I stood there holding my phone, feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath my feet. Dylan arrested? My Dylan, who'd never even gotten a parking ticket. My son, who graduated top of his class at Georgetown Law, who worked at one of Boston's most prestigious corporate law firms, who called me every Sunday without fail? None of this made sense. The text message came through 30 seconds later with an address in Beacon Hill, one of Boston's most exclusive historic neighborhoods. Of course, a federal judge would live there. The kind of address that screamed old money and power. I grabbed my car keys with shaking hands. Every maternal instinct I had was screaming that something was terribly wrong. But I had to know what happened to my son. I changed quickly from my comfortable work-from-home clothes into a navy blazer and slacks, something appropriate for meeting a federal judge even under these bizarre circumstances. As I drove through the nearly empty streets of Boston, my mind raced through possibilities. What could Dylan have possibly done to warrant arrest? And why would a federal judge call me personally? Why meet at his home instead of through official channels? The drive to Beacon Hill took 20 minutes, though it felt like hours. I parked on the cobblestone street in front of a beautiful federal-style brick mansion, the kind of home that probably dated back to the 1820s and cost somewhere north of $8 million. Warm light glowed from the tall windows, and I could see expensive curtains drawn partially closed. I walked up the stone steps and rang the doorbell. Within moments, the door opened, and I found myself face to face with Judge Marcus Thornfield. I recognized him from his official photo on the district court website. He was in his early 60s, with perfectly groomed gray hair, wearing an expensive-looking cardigan over a dress shirt and slacks. He looked every inch the distinguished jurist, except for his eyes. His eyes looked worried, almost frightened. "Mrs. Westbrook, thank you for coming so quickly. Please, come in." I stepped into an entrance hall that belonged in a museum. Original hardwood floors, antique furniture, oil paintings that were probably worth more than most people's houses. But I wasn't here to admire his wealth. "Judge Thornfield, please tell me what's happening with my son. What is he being charged with? Please, let's go to my study. We need privacy for this conversation." He led me down a hallway lined with more expensive artwork into a wood-paneled room filled with leather-bound books and mahogany furniture. The room smelled of old paper and expensive scotch. He closed the door behind us and gestured to one of the leather chairs. I sat, perching on the edge, unable to relax. "Mrs. Westbrook, Your son was arrested this evening on charges of possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute, as well as obstruction of justice. He's being held at the Federal Detention Center. The words hit me like a physical blow. That's impossible. Dylan doesn't use drugs. He barely drinks alcohol. There must be some mistake. I understand this is shocking, Mrs. Westbrook. I've reviewed the arrest report. The police found significant quantities of cocaine in his apartment during a search conducted this evening. A search? Why were they searching his apartment? This doesn't make any sense. Dylan called me just yesterday. He was excited about a case he was working on, some corporate audit or something. He was fine. He was happy. Judge Thornfield walked over to his desk and picked up what looked like a small digital recorder. Mrs. Westbrook, before you make any decisions about how to proceed, I need you to listen to something. This is a recording that was made earlier today. It involves your son. What kind of recording? Just listen, please. His hand trembled slightly as he pressed the play button. Dylan's voice filled the room, and I felt tears spring to my eyes at the sound of it. But what he was saying made my blood run cold. The transfer needs to go through the offshore account in the Caymans. 2.3 million, split into smaller transactions to avoid flagging. We'll backdate the invoices to match the payment schedule. Another voice, one I didn't recognize. And the documents? I'll handle the falsification. I have access to the corporate seal. Nobody questions my work. I'm the golden boy, remember? Dylan laughed, but it sounded wrong, forced. What about the inspector? We'll handle him the same way we handled the last one. A little cash, a few veiled threats about his family. These government types always fold. The recording continued for another minute, with Dylan discussing bribes, falsified documents, and what sounded like a sophisticated money laundering operation. I sat frozen, unable to process what I was hearing. This couldn't be my son. Dylan was ethical to a fault. He'd once driven 40 minutes back to a restaurant because the waitress had given him too much change and he wanted to return it. Judge Thornfield turned off the recorder and looked at me with what appeared to be genuine sympathy. I don't believe it, I whispered. That can't be real. Dylan would never... Mrs. Westbrook, I need you to understand something. I'm not supposed to be telling you any of this. I'm certainly not supposed to be meeting with the mother of a defendant in my own home. But I'm going to be very frank with you because I believe you're a reasonable woman and because I think we can help each other. Something in his tone made me look up sharply. The sympathetic expression was still on his face, but something had changed in his eyes. They had gone cold. Help each other? What are you talking about? You're a successful businesswoman, Mrs. Westbrook, CEO of Westbrook Consulting, $8 million in net worth, impressive property portfolio, excellent reputation in the Boston business community. He recited these facts about my life with casual precision, and I felt a chill run down my spine. You've built an empire. You're smart. You understand how the world really works. I don't understand what my business has to do with Dylan's arrest. Don't you? Mrs. Westbrook, your son is facing 20 to 30 years in federal prison. The evidence against him is substantial. The recording you just heard is one of several. We have documentation, we have financial records, we have testimony from cooperating witnesses. Dylan's legal career is over. His life as he knows it is over. I felt sick. But you said we could help each other. What does that mean? Judge Thornfield sat down behind his desk, steepling his fingers. It means I'm in a position to make this all go away. The charges, the evidence, all of it. Dylan could walk out of that detention center tomorrow morning and return to his life as if nothing happened. How? Why would you do that? Because, Mrs. Westbrook, I need something from you. Your company has connections throughout the Boston business community. You consult for major corporations. You have relationships with executives at dozens of firms. You facilitate deals. You advise on strategic initiatives. You're perfectly positioned to help me with a certain ongoing project. My mind was racing, trying to understand what was happening. What kind of project? I need you to facilitate some business arrangements through your consulting firm. certain contracts with certain companies. Invoicing that doesn't quite match up with services rendered. Payments that get routed through various entities before reaching their final destination. Nothing you haven't seen before in your career, I'm sure. The corporate world is full of creative accounting. I stared at him, finally understanding. You want me to launder money through my company? Such an ugly term. I prefer to think of it as facilitating mutually beneficial business arrangements. And if I refuse? His expression hardened. Then your son goes to prison for a very long time. And Mrs. Westbrook, federal prison is not kind to young, educated, privileged men like Dylan. He won't survive it, not intact anyway. I felt rage building in my chest, hot and sharp. You're blackmailing me. You're threatening my son to force me into criminal activity. I'm offering you a choice. Cooperate and Dylan walks free. Refuse, and he pays the price for his crimes. Those are your options. I want to see my son. I want to talk to a lawyer. Of course. You can visit Dylan tomorrow during regular visiting hours. As for a lawyer, well, that's your right. But I should mention that the recording you heard? It's edited, Mrs. Westbrook. A very clever edit. The full unedited version tells quite a different story. But that version isn't going to see the light of day unless you cooperate. The version that will be presented in court, the version that will send your son to prison, is the one you just heard. I couldn't breathe. This man, this federal judge who was supposed to represent justice and integrity, was calmly threatening to destroy my son's life unless I became a criminal. I need time to think about this. Of course. Take 48 hours. Come back here Friday night at the same time. We'll discuss the details of our arrangement. But Mrs. Westbrook, if you go to the police, if you tell anyone about our conversation, if you try to fight this, I will bury your son so deep in the federal system that you'll never see him again. Do we understand each other? I stood up on shaking legs. I understand perfectly, Judge Thornfield. Excellent. I'll see you Friday. He stood and walked me to the door with perfect courtesy, as if we'd just had a pleasant social visit. I drove home in a daze, my mind spinning. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built, was being threatened. But more than that, my son was in danger, and the very system that was supposed to protect him was being used as a weapon against us both. When I got home, I sat in my car in the driveway for a long time, just trying to process what had happened. Then I pulled out my phone and called the one person I trusted completely. Helena? It's almost midnight. What's wrong? Lena Castellano, my best friend for 20 years, answered on the second ring. Lena, I need you. Can you come over right now? Something terrible has happened. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I went inside and poured myself a scotch with trembling hands. I never drank scotch, but tonight I needed something strong. When Lena arrived, I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, her face growing more concerned with each word. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Helena, this is a trap. Everything about this screams trap. A federal judge doesn't call defendants' mothers to his home. He doesn't offer to make charges disappear. This is corrupt, and it's dangerous, and you cannot trust anything he told you. But what about Dylan? The recording, the evidence. You said it yourself. Dylan would never do those things, which means the evidence is fake. The question is why? Why frame Dylan? Why target you? What does this judge really want? I hadn't thought of it that way. I'd been so panicked about Dylan that I hadn't stopped to question the fundamental logic of the situation. I need to see Dylan tomorrow. I need to hear from him what actually happened. Yes. And Helena, you need to be very careful. Don't go to the police yet. We don't know who else might be involved, but start documenting everything. Write down every detail of tonight while it's fresh in your mind. We're going to figure this out. After Lena left, I sat at my computer and typed out everything I could remember from the conversation with Judge Thornfield. Every word, every gesture, every detail. Then I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind refusing to shut down. My son was in jail. A federal judge was blackmailing me, and somewhere in this nightmare, there had to be a truth I wasn't seeing yet. I just had to find it before Friday night, before I had to give Judge Thornfield an answer that could determine the rest of my life and Dylan's. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Dylan's voice on that recording, saying things I knew he would never say. By 6 a.m, I gave up trying and made coffee, watching the sun rise over Boston Harbor from my penthouse windows. This penthouse had been my first major purchase after the divorce 15 years ago. I remembered standing in this exact spot back then, 30 pounds thinner from stress, my hair just starting to show its first gray streaks, looking out at the city and promising myself that I would never be vulnerable again. I would never depend on anyone. I would build something that was entirely mine. And I had. God, I had worked for it. Richard and I had been married for 18 years when I discovered he was having an affair with Jennifer Hartley, his business partner at their investment firm. Dylan was 13 at the time, just starting 8th grade at a prestigious private school in Cambridge. I'll never forget the day I found out. I'd stopped by Richard's office to surprise him with lunch, and his secretary looked at me with such pity that I knew immediately something was wrong. Mrs. Westbrook, Mr. Almore. Westbrook is in a meeting right now. With whom? Ms. Hartley. They've been in there for about an hour. They asked not to be disturbed. I didn't knock. I just opened the door to his office. They weren't having sex, but they might as well have been. They were sitting close together on his leather sofa, her hand on his thigh, both of them laughing at something on his laptop screen. The way they looked at each other told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't new. This had been going on for a while. Richard had the decency to look shocked. Jennifer just smiled at me, a small, triumphant smile that made me want to slap her. Helena, this isn't what it looks like. Don't insult my intelligence, Richard. I left without another word. I called my lawyer before I even got to my car. The divorce took 14 months and cost me almost everything I had in legal fees, but I didn't care. I wanted out. I wanted away from him, from the humiliation, from the life we'd built together that had turned out to be a lie. The worst part wasn't losing Richard. By the time the divorce was final, I realized I hadn't loved him for years. The worst part was watching what it did to Dylan. My quiet, sensitive son became even more withdrawn. He threw himself into his studies, getting perfect grades, never causing trouble, as if he thought being perfect might somehow fix our broken family. I tried to talk to him about it. Dylan, honey, the divorce isn't your fault. Your father and I just grew apart. I know, Mom. But his eyes told me he didn't really know. He blamed himself somehow, the way children do. After the divorce, I had approximately $200,000 left, my car, and my pride. I'd worked in corporate consulting before Dylan was born, but I'd stepped back to part-time when he was young. Now, I needed to build something real, something that would provide security for both of us, something that would prove I didn't need Richard or anyone else. I started Westbrook Consulting in a tiny rented office in downtown Boston with 1 assistant and 3 clients I'd poached from my old firm. I worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. Dylan was in school, then in after-school programs, then home with a nanny while I worked late into the night. I told myself I was doing it for him, to give him a secure future, to pay for the best schools and opportunities. But if I'm honest, I was also doing it for myself. I needed to prove that I could succeed, that I wasn't just Richard's wife, that I was somebody. Within 3 years, Westbrook Consulting had 15 employees and 27 corporate clients. Within 5 years, we'd moved to a prestigious office building in the financial district, and I'd been featured in Boston Business Journal as one of the city's top female entrepreneurs. Within 10 years, I'd built the company to 50 employees and annual revenues of $12 million. Dylan went to Harvard for undergraduate, then Georgetown Law. I paid every penny of his tuition, proud that I could give him that. He graduated summa cum laude, passed the bar on his first try, and got offers from 6 top law firms. He chose Morrison, Sterling & Associates, one of Boston's most prestigious corporate law firms. I was so proud of him. My son, the lawyer. Everything I'd worked for had been worth it, but I knew I'd missed things, important things. I'd missed soccer games and school plays because I was in client meetings. I'd missed his high school graduation party because I was at a conference in Chicago. I'd sent expensive gifts instead of spending time with him. I'd thought providing for him financially was the same as being there for him emotionally. Dylan never complained. He was always understanding, always supportive. "It's okay, Mom. I know you're building something important." But I saw the sadness in his eyes sometimes when I had to cancel plans. He'd been working at Morrison, Sterling & Associates for 2 years now. He'd called me just last Sunday for our weekly check-in call, sounding more excited than I'd heard him in months. "Mom, I got assigned to a really interesting case. Corporate audit for this construction company that does federal contracts. It's my first chance to really take the lead on something substantive instead of just doing document review." "That's wonderful, honey. I'm so proud of you." "I've been going through their financial records, and there's some really interesting stuff here. Some of the invoicing doesn't quite add up. I think there might be some accounting irregularities. Nothing major, probably just sloppy bookkeeping, but it's good experience for me to learn how to spot these things." "Just be careful, Dylan. Corporate audits can get political sometimes." "I will, Mom. Don't worry. It's probably nothing." That was 5 days ago, and now he was in federal detention, arrested on drug charges that made no sense, with a recording of him discussing crimes I knew he hadn't committed. I looked at the clock. Visiting hours at the federal detention center started at 9. I had 3 hours to pull myself together, to figure out what questions to ask Dylan, to try to understand what was really happening. I showered and dressed carefully in a simple black pantsuit. Professional, composed, nothing that would draw attention. Then I called my assistant and told her I was taking a personal day. I never took personal days. In 15 years of running Westbrook Consulting, I'd taken exactly 8 sick days and 2 weeks of vacation total. "Is everything okay, Mrs. Westbrook?" "Family emergency. I'll check email periodically, but cancel today's meetings." The drive to the federal detention center felt surreal. This was where they kept people awaiting trial for serious crimes. Drug traffickers, white-collar criminals, and now my son. The facility was a gray concrete building that looked exactly like what it was, a place designed to hold people who'd lost their freedom. I went through security, showed my ID, filled out paperwork. The guards were professional but cold. I was just another visitor to them, another family member of another criminal. Finally, they led me to a visiting room divided by plexiglass partitions with phones for communication. I sat down and waited, my heart pounding. Then Dylan walked in, wearing an orange jumpsuit, and I almost started crying right there. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and a bruise on his left cheek. My baby, my son. He sat down across from me and picked up the phone. I picked up mine. "Mom." His voice cracked. "Dylan, are you okay? What happened to your face?" "I'm fine. Just a misunderstanding with another inmate last night." "Mom, I didn't do what they're saying. You have to believe me." "I believe you, sweetheart. I know you didn't. But I need you to tell me everything that happened. Start from the beginning." Dylan took a shaky breath. "You remember the case I told you about? The corporate audit for Patterson Construction?" "Yes." "Well, I found something big. The invoicing irregularities weren't just sloppy bookkeeping. They were systematic. Patterson was billing the federal government for materials and services they never provided. But the money wasn't just disappearing. It was being routed through shell companies, and then it was showing up in offshore accounts. Whose accounts? That's what I spent 2 weeks tracking down. Mom, it leads back to Judge Marcus Thornfield. $2.3 million in the past 18 months alone, filtered through Patterson Construction into accounts in the Cayman Islands that are ultimately controlled by him. My blood went cold. Thornfield. You know him. Keep talking. What did you do when you found this? I did everything by the book. I documented everything, made copies of all the evidence, and I took it to my supervising partner, Robert Morrison. I showed him everything I'd found. I told him we needed to report it. What did he say? He told me I'd done good work and that he'd handle it from there. He told me not to discuss it with anyone while he figured out the best way to proceed. That was Monday afternoon. Tuesday morning, I woke up to police breaking down my apartment door. They had a search warrant. They said they had a tip that I was dealing drugs. And then they found cocaine. A lot of it. In my bedroom closet, in a box I'd never seen before. Someone planted it. Obviously. But I can't prove that. And then they arrested me, and they told me they had recordings of me discussing drug deals and money laundering. But Mom, I never said those things. I don't know how they have recordings of my voice saying things I never said. I closed my eyes, feeling sick. They edited them. They took your voice from somewhere else, maybe from your meetings about the Patterson case, and they edited it to sound like you were confessing to crimes. Is that possible? With the right software, yes. Dylan, I need to tell you something. I explained about Judge Thornfield's call, about going to his house, about the recording he'd played for me, and his blackmail attempt. Dylan's face went white. Mom, no. You can't give in to him. If you do what he wants, you'll be committing actual crimes. He'll have real leverage over you then. But if I don't, he's going to make sure you go to prison. Then I go to prison. I'll appeal. Eventually, the truth will come out. Dylan, you can't survive 20 years in federal prison. You have a bruise after one night. I'll survive. But Mom, if you do what he wants, Thornfield wins. And there's something else you need to know. When I was documenting the money trail, I found something. 5 years ago, Patterson Construction did a project that your company consulted on. Remember the Riverside Development Project? I did remember. It had been a major contract, and Westbrook Consulting had advised on the procurement process. It was completely legitimate work. Thornfield knows about that connection. If he can make you cooperate with him, if he can get you to actually commit crimes through your company, he can claim that you were involved in the corruption all along. He can say you and I were working together. He can destroy both of us and protect himself at the same time. I hadn't thought of that. Dylan, even in jail, was thinking more clearly than I was. So, what do? We find the real evidence, and we find someone we can trust to help us. I left the detention center feeling like I was moving through water. Everything seemed slower, heavier, more difficult. But Dylan was right. We needed help, and we needed evidence. The question was who to trust and how to get it. I sat in my car in the parking lot and called Lena. How is he? Scared but clear-headed. Lena, this is bigger than I thought. Dylan discovered that Judge Thornfield is involved in a massive corruption scheme. That's why they arrested him. They're trying to silence him and use me as a scapegoat. Jesus, Helena, what are you going to do? I don't know yet, but I can't go to the police. Thornfield is a federal judge. He clearly has connections in law enforcement, or they wouldn't have arrested Dylan so quickly on fabricated charges. I need to think this through. Come to my gallery. Let's talk in person. Lena owned the Castellano Gallery in the South End, a beautiful space that showcased contemporary artists. We'd been friends since our daughters were in the same playgroup, back when I was still married to Richard. She'd been the one who'd helped me through the divorce, who'd believed in me when I started my company, who'd celebrated every success with me. I drove to the gallery and found Lena in her office upstairs. She took one look at me and pulled me into a hug. I let myself lean into her for just a moment before pulling away. I can't fall apart, not yet. I need to figure this out first. Okay, talk me through what we know. I laid it all out for her. Dylan's discovery of the corruption, the timeline of his arrest, the edited recordings, Thornfield's blackmail attempt, the connection to my company through the Riverside Development Project. So Thornfield is trying to force you to become an actual criminal so he can use you as a shield if anyone investigates him, Lena said. That's diabolical. And effective. If I refuse, Dylan goes to prison on fake charges. If I agree, I become guilty of real crimes and Thornfield has permanent leverage over me. Unless we can prove Dylan's innocent and Thornfield's corrupt before Friday. That gives us 3 days. Then we better get started. What did Dylan say about evidence? He made copies of everything he found. Financial records, transfer documents, emails. He said he gave it all to his supervising partner, Robert Morrison. Do you think Morrison is involved? I thought about it. Dylan trusted him enough to show him the evidence, but the arrest happened less than 24 hours later. Either Morrison is part of it, or he told someone who is. Can you get to Dylan's evidence? Does he have copies anywhere else? I don't know. The police searched his apartment. They probably took his computers, his files, everything. What about cloud storage? Email? Maybe. But I don't have access to his accounts. Lena tapped her fingers on her desk, thinking. What about the law firm? If Dylan was working on this as part of a case, there would be files at Morrison Sterling. I can't exactly walk in there and ask for them. No, but you could visit under some other pretense. You've consulted for law firms before. You know how they operate. She was right. I'd done several projects for legal practices over the years. I knew their systems, their procedures. I'd need a reason to be there that wouldn't raise suspicion. What if you're there as a concerned mother? Dylan's been arrested. You want to collect his personal belongings from his office. That would be normal, wouldn't it? It was risky, but it might work. I'd have to go soon, before they clean out his office or lock me out. Then go now. I'll come with you if you want. No, one person is less suspicious than two. But Lena, if something happens to me, if I don't come back, you need to know everything. You need to be able to tell someone. Nothing's going to happen to you. Just in case, I'm going to email you all my notes from last night, everything Thornfield said, everything Dylan told me this morning. If I disappear or if I have an accident, you take it to the media. Not the police, the media. Can you do that? Helena, you're scaring me. Good. We should be scared. These people are dangerous. I drove to Morrison, Sterling and Associates, a gleaming glass tower in the financial district. I'd been here once before, about a year ago, when Dylan first started working there. He'd given me a tour of the office, so proud to show me his small workspace. The receptionist looked up as I entered. Can I help you? Yes, I'm Helena Westbrook. My son, Dylan Westbrook, works here. I need to collect some of his personal items from his office. Her expression shifted to something like pity. Oh, Mrs. Westbrook, I'm so sorry about Dylan's situation. Let me call Mr. Morrison's assistant. She picked up the phone and spoke quietly. A few minutes later, a young woman in a crisp suit appeared. Mrs. Westbrook, I'm Caroline Chen, Mr. Morrison's executive assistant. He asked me to help you. I'm so sorry about what happened to Dylan. Thank you. I just want to get his personal things. Family photos, that kind of thing. Of course. Follow me. She led me through the office. It was after hours now, almost 6 p.m., and most of the attorneys had gone home. We passed a few associates working late in their offices, their faces illuminated by computer screens. Dylan's office was small, but had a window, which meant he was doing well for a junior associate. There was a photo of the two of us from his law school graduation on his desk, some law books on the shelves, a Red Sox pennant on the wall. Take your time, Caroline said. I'll be at my desk if you need anything. Actually, I was wondering, did Dylan leave any case files here that I should take? I know he was working on something important. Caroline hesitated. Mr. Morrison has Dylan's active case files. They'll need to be reassigned to other attorneys. Of course. I just thought there might be personal notes or something. I don't think so, but you're welcome to look. She left, and I quickly searched Dylan's desk. The drawers were mostly empty, some pens, legal pads, business cards. His computer was gone, probably taken by IT or by the police. I felt frustration building. If Dylan had kept evidence here, it was gone now. Then I noticed something. The Red Sox pennant on the wall was slightly crooked, like it had been moved recently. Dylan was meticulous about things like that. I lifted the corner of the pennant and found a small USB drive taped to the wall behind it. My heart jumped. I palmed the drive and continued searching the office, finding nothing else of interest. I took the photo from his graduation and a few other personal items, tucking them into my purse along with the USB drive. "Find everything?" Caroline asked when I came out. "Yes, thank you so much for your help." "Mrs. Westbrook, can I say something? Dylan is a good person. Everyone here knows that. Whatever happened, I'm sure there's an explanation." "Thank you, Caroline. That means a lot." I made it to my car before my hands started shaking. I had the USB drive, but I couldn't look at it here. I needed to get somewhere safe. I drove home, checking my mirrors constantly to make sure I wasn't being followed. Once inside my apartment, I locked the door and pulled out my laptop. I hesitated before inserting the USB drive. If there was tracking software on it, if someone was monitoring what Dylan had stored here, I could be putting myself in danger. But I had to know. I plugged in the drive. It was encrypted, requiring a password. I tried Dylan's birthday. No. I tried my birthday. No. Then I tried the date of his law school graduation, the photo that had been on his desk. The drive opened. There were hundreds of files, spreadsheets, PDFs of invoices, bank statements, email correspondence. Dylan had documented everything. I spent the next 2 hours going through it, and with each file, I felt sicker. The corruption was even worse than Dylan had described. Thornfield wasn't just taking bribes from Patterson Construction. He'd been running a systematic pay-to-play scheme for at least 15 years. Companies paid him to win favorable rulings in their cases. He'd accepted money to reduce sentences for white-collar criminals. He'd dismissed cases that should have gone to trial. He'd sold his position and his integrity over and over again. And there were names, other judges, police officers, politicians. This wasn't just one corrupt judge. This was an entire network. I found the financial records Dylan had traced, showing $2.3 million flowing from Patterson Construction through various shell companies to accounts in the Cayman Islands controlled by Thornfield. But there was more. Over 15 years, Thornfield had taken approximately $18 million in bribes and kickbacks. There were also recordings, but these were real, not edited. Dylan had somehow gotten audio of meetings between Thornfield and various people discussing payments and favors. I listened to one where Thornfield was talking to someone named Vincent. "The Martinez case needs to disappear. Make sure the evidence gets contaminated during processing. I'll take care of the rest." "What about the witness?" "Encourage her to reconsider her testimony. You know how to be persuasive, Vincent." I felt physically ill. Thornfield was talking about destroying evidence and intimidating witnesses. How many innocent people had suffered because of him? How many guilty people had walked free? But I also had a problem. This evidence proved Thornfield was corrupt, but it didn't prove Dylan was innocent. The drug charges against Dylan were separate. I needed to prove those charges were fabricated. I kept searching through the files and found something interesting. A document Dylan had created titled Timeline of Discoveries and Actions. It was a detailed log of when he found each piece of evidence, when he reported it to Morrison, and what happened next. According to the timeline, Dylan had presented his findings to Morrison on Monday at 2 p.m. At 4 p.m. that same day, Morrison had called Detective Vincent Moretti to discuss an urgent matter. At 8 p.m., Dylan's apartment was broken into, though nothing appeared to be stolen, and Dylan initially thought it was just a burglary attempt. At 6 a.m. Tuesday, the police arrived with a search warrant and found the planted drugs. Detective Vincent Moretti. The same Vincent from the recording discussing evidence tampering with Thornfield. I had my connection. Moretti was Thornfield's enforcer. Morrison had tipped off Thornfield about Dylan's discoveries. Thornfield had ordered Moretti to plant the drugs, and they'd arrested Dylan to silence him. But knowing it and proving it were different things. My phone rang, making me jump. Unknown number again. I answered it. Mrs. Westbrook, you've had an eventful day. It was Thornfield's voice, smooth and menacing. How did you know where I was? I know everything you do, Mrs. Westbrook. I know you visited your son this morning. I know you went to his law firm this afternoon. I know you're sitting in your apartment right now looking at files you shouldn't have. Ice flooded my veins. He was watching me. Or someone was watching me for him. I'm just collecting my son's personal belongings. Don't insult my intelligence. You found Dylan's little insurance policy. I knew he'd hidden copies somewhere. That USB drive you took from his office belongs to me now. Everything on it is fruit of the poisonous tree, obtained through illegal means. It will never be admissible in court, but it could cause me significant inconvenience if it fell into the wrong hands. What do you want? I want you to destroy those files and bring me the drive on Friday night when you come to give me your answer. And Mrs. Westbrook, I want you to remember something. I can make Dylan's time in detention very unpleasant. Prison is a dangerous place. Accidents happen. Inmates get violent. Guards look the other way. It would be tragic if something happened to your son while he's in my custody. You're threatening to have him killed. I'm reminding you of reality. You have until Friday to decide. Cooperate and Dylan goes free. Fight me and he dies. Those are your options. Oh, and Mrs. Westbrook, don't bother going to the FBI or any other agency. I have friends everywhere. Any report you file will come straight back to me, and then all bets are off. Good night. He hung up. I sat there, trembling with rage and fear. He'd threatened my son's life, but he'd also confirmed something important. He was worried about the evidence on this drive, which meant it could hurt him. I needed to make copies, multiple copies, and hide them where he couldn't find them. And I needed to find someone I could trust, someone outside of Boston's legal system, someone who wasn't part of Thornfield's network. Then I remembered something. 5 years ago, I'd consulted for a company that was being investigated by the FBI for securities fraud. The lead investigator on that case had been thorough, fair, and completely incorruptible. She'd turned down attempts at bribery, ignored political pressure, and ultimately built a case that sent 3 executives to prison. Her name was Sophia Martinez. She was a federal prosecutor now, working out of the Boston office. But more importantly, I remembered something she'd said during the investigation. Her younger brother had been wrongly convicted of assault based on fabricated evidence. He'd served 3 years before new evidence exonerated him. Sophia had become a prosecutor specifically to fight corruption in the justice system. If anyone would help us, it would be her. But I had to be careful. If Thornfield found out I was talking to a federal prosecutor, he'd carry out his threat against Dylan. I needed to approach her quietly, with enough evidence that she'd take the case seriously, and I needed to do it in a way that wouldn't trigger Thornfield's surveillance. I spent the next hour making encrypted copies of Dylan's files, uploading them to multiple secure cloud storage accounts under fake names. Then, I made physical copies on 3 more USB drives and hid them in different locations in my apartment. Finally, I sat down and wrote everything out again. Every detail, every conversation, every threat. If something happened to me, there would be a record. It was almost midnight when Lena called. Did you get Dylan's things? I got more than that. I found his evidence. Lena, it's worse than we thought. Thornfield's been doing this for 15 years. He's part of a whole network of corrupt officials. Then you can prove Dylan's innocent. I can prove Thornfield is guilty, but I need help. I need someone in law enforcement who isn't part of his network, and I need to keep Dylan safe while I build a case. What are you going to do? I'm going to find Sophia Martinez. She's a federal prosecutor. I worked with her years ago, and I think I can trust her. But I have to be smart about it. Thornfield is watching me. Helena, be careful. These people have already shown they're willing to frame Dylan and threaten his life. What would they do to you? Whatever they want. But I'm not going to let fear stop me. Dylan is my son. I'm going to save him, no matter what it takes. After we hung up, I allowed myself one moment of weakness. I looked at the photo from Dylan's office, the 2 of us at his graduation, both of us smiling. He looked so young, so hopeful. I'd been so proud that day. I would not let Thornfield destroy him. I would burn down his entire corrupt empire if that's what it took. But first, I had to survive until Friday. I woke up Thursday morning with a plan forming in my mind. I had less than 48 hours before I was supposed to give Thornfield my answer, and I needed to move fast. But I also needed to be smart. If Thornfield was monitoring me, I couldn't just walk into the federal prosecutor's office without raising alarms. I got dressed and went through my normal morning routine, making coffee, checking emails, as if everything was normal. Then I drove to my office at Westbrook Consulting. If anyone was watching, they'd see me going to work like any other day. Once at my office, I told my assistant I needed the morning for focused work and didn't want to be disturbed. Then I pulled up the directory for the U.S. Attorney's Office and found Sophia Martinez's contact information. I couldn't call from my office phone or my cell, both of which could be monitored. I left the building through the parking garage and walked 3 blocks to a coffee shop I'd never been to before. I bought a prepaid phone from a convenience store nearby, paid cash, and then found a quiet corner of the coffee shop. My hands were shaking as I dialed Sophia's direct line. Sophia Martinez. Ms. Martinez, this is Helena Westbrook. We worked together about 5 years ago on the Riverside development case. I don't know if you remember me. Mrs. Westbrook, of course I remember. You provided excellent consulting on that investigation. What can I do for you? I need to meet with you, but it has to be completely confidential. I have information about judicial corruption, and the people involved are dangerous. I believe my phone and possibly my movements are being monitored. There was a pause. That's a serious allegation. Can you give me any details? Not over the phone, but Ms. Martinez, my son has been arrested on fabricated charges as retaliation for discovering evidence of this corruption. A federal judge is blackmailing me to keep quiet. I have extensive documentation, but I need someone I can trust, and I remembered your brother's case. I remembered what you said about fighting corruption in the system. Another pause, longer this time. Where are you right now? A coffee shop on Tremont Street. Can you get to the public garden? There's a bench near the swan boats. 30 minutes. Yes. Come alone. If you see anyone following you, abort and call me back from this number. She hung up. I sat there for a moment, my heart pounding. This was it. I was either about to save Dylan or make everything worse. I left the coffee shop and walked slowly toward the public garden, taking a deliberately winding route, ducking into stores and coming out different exits, trying to see if anyone was following me. I didn't notice anyone, but that didn't mean they weren't there. The public garden was beautiful in the morning light, filled with tourists and locals enjoying the autumn weather. I found the bench near the swan boats and sat down, clutching my purse where I'd hidden one of the USB drives. Sophia appeared exactly 30 minutes later, wearing jeans and a casual jacket, not her usual professional attire. She sat down next to me, but didn't look at me directly. Tell me what's happening. I told her everything, speaking quietly but quickly. Dylan's discovery of the corruption, the arrest, Thornfield's blackmail, the threats against Dylan's life. As I spoke, I watched her face. She didn't interrupt, didn't react visibly, but I could see her jaw tightening. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Do you have the evidence with you? I handed her the USB drive. This is everything Dylan found. Financial records, recordings, documentation of bribes and payoffs going back 15 years. It's encrypted, but I'll give you the password. She took the drive and slipped it into her pocket. Mrs. Westbrook, what you're describing is a major corruption case involving a federal judge and possibly others. But I need you to understand something. Building a case like this takes time. We need to verify the evidence, corroborate it with independent sources, build an airtight prosecution. I don't have time. I have to give Thornfield an answer tomorrow night. Then you tell him you're still considering it. You stall. He threatened to have Dylan killed. He said accidents happen in detention. Guards look the other way. Sophia's expression darkened. The judge who's blackmailing you, it's Marcus Thornfield, isn't it? How did you know? Because I've suspected him for years. We've had multiple cases where evidence mysteriously disappeared, where witnesses recanted, where guilty defendants walked free after appearing before Thornfield. But we could never prove anything. He's been very careful. The recordings on that drive include him ordering evidence tampering and witness intimidation. The detective carrying out his orders is Vincent Moretti. Moretti. Sophia's face went hard. We've had questions about him too. Mrs. Westbrook, I'm going to be honest with you. If Thornfield is as connected as you say, building a case against him is going to require resources and time I'm not sure we have. But there might be another way. What way? What if we could get Moretti to flip, turn him into a cooperating witness? Why would he cooperate? He's part of Thornfield's network. Maybe. Or maybe he's just a cop who got in over his head and kept digging himself deeper. I've seen it before. Good people who make one bad choice and then can't find a way out. If we could offer him a deal, immunity in exchange for testimony, he might take it. How do we approach him without tipping off Thornfield? Very carefully. But Mrs. Westbrook, I need to ask you something. Are you prepared for what this means? If we move forward with this, if we go after Thornfield, your life is going to be turned upside down. You'll have to testify. Your company will be scrutinized. Your connection to the Riverside Development Project will be investigated. Everything will come out. I don't care about my company. I don't care about my reputation. I care about my son. Okay, then here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take this evidence back to my office and start reviewing it. I'm going to do it quietly, just me and one other prosecutor I trust completely. While I'm doing that, I want you to maintain your normal routine. Go to work, go home, act like nothing has changed. If Thornfield contacts you, stall him. Tell him you need more time to think. What about Dylan? How do I keep him safe? I'm going to make some calls. I have a contact at the detention center, someone I trust. I'll have Dylan moved to protective custody, but I'll do it quietly, make it look like routine processing. For the first time in days, I felt a small spark of hope. You really think we can stop him? I think we have a chance. But Helena, you need to be prepared for this to get worse before it gets better. Thornfield is dangerous, and he's going to fight back. I understand. Sophia stood up, still not looking directly at me. Destroy the phone you used to call me. Don't try to contact me again unless it's an absolute emergency. I'll reach out to you when I have something. And Helena? Be careful. You were right to be paranoid. These people will do anything to protect themselves. She walked away, disappearing into the crowd of people enjoying the park. I sat there for a few more minutes, pretending to enjoy the view, then got up and walked back toward my office. I was halfway there when my cell phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Mrs. Westbrook, you disappoint me. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you meeting with a federal prosecutor in a public park? You've made a very serious mistake. Check your email, now. My stomach dropped. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. There was a new message with a video attachment. I pressed play and felt the world tilt beneath my feet. It was security camera footage from inside the federal detention center. Dylan being attacked by 3 other inmates in what looked like a common area. Guards standing nearby, not intervening. The beating lasted almost a minute before the guards finally moved in. The video ended. Another text came through. Next time they won't stop it. You have until tomorrow night, Mrs. Westbrook. Don't make me ask again. I watched that video 3 times, each viewing making me feel sicker. My son curled on the floor, trying to protect his head while 3 men kicked him. The guards just watching. This was Thornfield's message. He could hurt Dylan whenever he wanted. I called Sophia from the burner phone, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. He knows. He knows I met with you. He just had Dylan beaten. Sophia, he's going to kill him. Calm down. Where are you right now? Walking back to my office, he sent me video of the attack. The guards just stood there and watched. Listen to me carefully. Go to your office. Act normal. I'm going to accelerate our timeline. We don't have until tomorrow night anymore. We have to move now. What are you going to do? I'm going to offer Detective Moretti a choice. But Helena, I need something from you. I need you to be brave for a few more hours. Can you do that? What do you need? I need you to go to that meeting with Thornfield tomorrow night. I need you to wear a wire and get him to incriminate himself on tape. He'll search me. He'll find it. Not if we use the right equipment. Meet me tonight at 8 p.m. Same place as before. Come alone. Make sure you're not followed. Can you do that? I thought about Dylan's face in that video, the way he'd tried to make himself small while those men hurt him. Yes, I can do it. The rest of the day crawled by. I sat in my office, trying to focus on work, trying to act normal while my mind raced. At 5 p.m., my phone rang. It was the detention center. Mrs. Westbrook? This is Nurse Patterson from the medical unit. Your son was involved in an altercation today. He's been treated for his injuries and he's stable, but I thought you should know. How bad is it? Bruised ribs, facial contusions, some minor lacerations. He'll be sore for a while, but nothing's broken. We're keeping him in the medical wing overnight for observation. Can I see him? Visiting hours are over for today, but you can come tomorrow morning. After she hung up, I put my head in my hands. Tomorrow morning I was supposed to give Thornfield my answer. Tomorrow night I was supposed to wear a wire and trap him. And in between, I had to see my son, had to look at what they'd done to him. At 7:30, I left my office and drove to the public garden again, taking a different route, stopping randomly to see if anyone was following. I didn't see anyone, but I'd missed them before. Sophia was already on the bench when I arrived. This time she had a small bag with her. How's Dylan? Beaten but alive. They're keeping him in medical overnight. Good. That's actually good. He'll be safer there, away from the general population. Helena, I spent the day going through the evidence on that drive. It's solid. More than solid. This is enough to bring down not just Thornfield, but at least a dozen other people. Judges, cops, politicians. But we need more. We need testimony, and we need Thornfield on tape, admitting what he's doing. You said you were going to approach Moretti. I did, 2 hours ago. I showed up at his house with 2 FBI agents and gave him a choice. Cooperate with us and get immunity, or go down with Thornfield and spend the next 20 years in federal prison. What did he say? He broke down crying. Said he's been trying to find a way out for years, but Thornfield has too much on him. He has a 12-year-old daughter with a chronic illness. Thornfield's been paying for her treatments. Moretti said if he stops doing what Thornfield wants, his daughter dies. I felt a stab of unexpected sympathy. So he's a victim too. He's a cop who crossed the line and couldn't find his way back, but he's willing to testify. He's willing to tell us everything. And Helena, what he told us in the past 2 hours is devastating. Thornfield's been running this operation for 17 years. He's taken over $23 million in bribes. He's fixed at least 47 cases that Moretti knows about. He's had evidence destroyed, witnesses intimidated, and in one case, a potential whistleblower who died in what was ruled an accidental drug overdose. He had someone killed. Moretti says he didn't do it himself, but he knows who did, and he'll testify to all of it. But we need one more thing. We need Thornfield on tape tonight, before tomorrow's meeting, in case something goes wrong. I don't understand. How can we record him tonight? Because Moretti's going to call him in 1 hour and tell him there's a problem, that you met with a federal prosecutor, that you're planning to fight back. Moretti's going to suggest they meet immediately to discuss how to handle it. And you'll be recording? Moretti will be wearing a wire. FBI will have surveillance teams in place. We'll get Thornfield admitting to everything, the blackmail, the threats, the corruption, and then we'll arrest him. Tonight? You're going to arrest him tonight? If everything goes according to plan, yes. But Helena, there's a risk. If Thornfield suspects Moretti is wearing a wire, if he searches him and finds it, Moretti could be killed. And Thornfield could run. That's why I need you as backup. If something goes wrong tonight, if we can't get what we need from Moretti's wire, you're our fallback. You'll keep your meeting tomorrow and you'll wear a wire. She pulled out what looked like a fancy pen from her bag. This is a recording device. It's voice-activated and has a range of about 20 feet. Keep it in your jacket pocket or your purse. Thornfield won't think twice about it. What do I need to get him to say? Get him to repeat his blackmail demands. Get him to admit he's threatening Dylan. Get him to talk about the corruption, about using your company to launder money. The more specific, the better. I took the pen, my hands still shaking. And if he searches me and finds this? Then you're in danger. That's why we're hoping tonight works. But Helena, if we have to use you tomorrow, we'll have agents nearby. Not close enough to spook Thornfield, but close enough to move in if things go bad. You won't be alone. Okay. What do I do now? Go home. Wait. If everything goes well tonight, you'll get a call from me telling you it's over and Dylan is safe. If you don't hear from me by midnight, that means we need you tomorrow. Either way, I'll contact you. She stood up to leave, then turned back. Helena, you're doing the right thing. I know this is terrifying, but what you're doing is going to save lives. Thornfield has been destroying innocent people for nearly 2 decades. You're stopping him. After she left, I drove home and waited. The hours crawled by. 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., no call. At 10:45, my phone finally rang. It was Sophia. We got him. Helena, we got it all. Moretti wore the wire, met with Thornfield, and Thornfield confessed to everything. The blackmail, the bribes, ordering the attack on Dylan, all of it. We have him on tape threatening to have Dylan killed if you don't cooperate. We have him admitting to 17 years of corruption. FBI agents arrested him 20 minutes ago at his home. I felt my knees give out, and I sat down hard on my couch. It's over. For Thornfield, yes. We're executing search warrants on his properties right now. We'll find more evidence, more proof of what he's done. And Helena, Dylan's charges are being dropped. First thing tomorrow morning, he'll be released. I started crying, great heaving sobs of relief and exhaustion and joy. Thank you. God, thank you. Thank Moretti. He's the one who had the courage to stand up and tell the truth. And thank yourself. If you hadn't come to me, if you hadn't been willing to fight, Thornfield would still be out there destroying lives. After I hung up, I just sat there crying for a long time. Then I called Lena. It's over. They arrested Thornfield. Dylan's being released tomorrow. Lena screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Oh my God, Helena, oh my God. Are you serious? Sophia just called. It's really over. I'm coming over. We're celebrating. I don't care that it's 11 at night. But I didn't want to celebrate yet. Not until I saw Dylan. Not until I could hold him and know he was really safe. I barely slept that night. At 6 a.m., I was up and dressed. At 7, I got the call from Sophia that Dylan was being processed for release. At 8:30, I was standing outside the Federal Detention Center, waiting. And then I saw him, walking out through those doors, wearing his own clothes again, carrying a plastic bag with his belongings. He was bruised and limping slightly, but he was free. Mom! He ran to me and I grabbed him, holding him so tight he winced. I'm sorry. Did I hurt you? I don't care. God, Mom, they told me what you did. They told me you went to the prosecutor, that you were willing to wear a wire. You could have been killed. You're my son. I would have done anything to save you. We stood there in the parking lot, holding each other, both of us crying. I'm so sorry, I whispered. I'm sorry I wasn't there more when you were growing up. I'm sorry I put work ahead of you so many times. I'm sorry it took this nightmare to make me realize what really matters. Mom, you built an empire. You gave me everything. I gave you money and opportunities, but I should have given you more of myself. I'm going to fix that, starting now. We drove back to my apartment together. On the way, Dylan told me what he'd learned from the FBI agents who'd interviewed him that morning. They arrested 17 people last night. Judges, cops, lawyers, even 2 city council members. Thornfield's operation was huge. And Mom, they said the evidence I collected was crucial. If I hadn't found those financial records, If I hadn't documented everything, they might never have been able to prove it all. You did the right thing. Even when it put you in danger, you did the right thing. I learned that from you. You always taught me to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. At my apartment, I made breakfast while Dylan showered and changed into clean clothes I'd bought for him. When he came out, looking more like himself despite the bruises, we sat at my dining table and ate together. What happens now? I asked. The FBI wants me to testify at the trials. Sophia said it could take a year or more to prosecute everyone involved. But she also said, Morrison, Sterling is being investigated. My boss, Robert Morrison, was taking kickbacks from Thornfield. The whole firm might collapse. What will you do? I don't know. Start over somewhere new, I guess. Maybe work for the prosecutor's office. Sophia said she'd hire me in a heartbeat. Or maybe I'll go into criminal defense, help people who've been wrongly accused like I was. Whatever you choose, I'm proud of you. My phone rang. It was Sophia. Helena, I wanted to give you an update. We searched Thornfield's home and found over $2 million in cash hidden in a secret safe. We also found evidence of 3 more corruption schemes we didn't know about. This case is going to be even bigger than we thought. What about Dylan? Is he safe now? Completely safe. Everyone involved in threatening him has been arrested. The inmates who attacked him were paid by a guard who was on Thornfield's payroll. The guard's been arrested too. Dylan can go back to his life. Thank you, Sophia, for everything. Helena, there's one more thing. Your ex-husband, Richard, tried to contact Thornfield's lawyer this morning. He wanted to know if there were any charges being filed against you or your company related to the Riverside Development Project. My blood ran cold. Richard was involved? We don't think so. But he was fishing for information, probably hoping to use this situation to his advantage somehow. Just thought you should know he's circling. After I hung up, I told Dylan what Sophia had said. Dad's unbelievable. His son nearly gets killed and he's trying to figure out how to exploit it. That's who he is, but he doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that we're both safe, and this is over. Dylan reached across the table and took my hand. Mom, I want you to know something. These past few days, seeing what you did to save me, seeing how far you were willing to go, I've never felt more loved in my entire life. You're an amazing mother. And that's when I finally let myself believe it was really over. My son was safe. The corrupt judge who'd threatened us was behind bars, and I'd learned what truly mattered in life. Everything else was just details. The days following Thornfield's arrest felt surreal, like waking up from a nightmare only to find the world had changed while I slept. Dylan stayed with me for the first week, both of us needing the comfort of knowing the other was safe. We fell into a rhythm I'd forgotten was possible. Breakfast together every morning, long conversations over coffee, evenings spent watching movies or just talking about everything and nothing. On the 3rd day, Sophia called with more news. Helena, Detective Moretti wants to meet with you and Dylan. He wants to apologize in person for what he did. You don't have to agree, but I told him I'd ask. I looked at Dylan, who was sitting across from me working on his laptop. It's up to you, sweetheart. Dylan thought for a moment. I want to hear what he has to say. We met Moretti at a coffee shop in Brookline 2 days later. He looked terrible, like he'd aged 10 years in a week. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his hands shook when he picked up his coffee cup. Mrs. Westbrook, Dylan, I don't expect you to forgive me. What I did was inexcusable. I planted evidence in your apartment. I arrested you knowing you were innocent. I stood by while Thornfield threatened your family. Dylan's voice was cold. Why did you do it? At first, it was money. My daughter Maya was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder when she was 4. The treatments cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Insurance covered some, but not enough. I was drowning in medical debt. Thornfield offered me a way out. Do a few favors, look the other way sometimes, and he'd make sure Maya got the care she needed. And later? I asked. Later, I was trapped. I'd done too many things I couldn't take back. Thornfield had evidence of everything. If I tried to stop, he'd destroy me, and Maya would lose her father along with her medical care. So I kept going, telling myself I was doing it for her, that I was protecting her. But I knew I'd become the kind of cop I used to despise. What changed? Dylan asked. Moretti looked at him directly for the first time. Watching your mother. When she came to meet with Sophia in the park, I was there. Thornfield had me following her. I saw the fear in her eyes, but I also saw the courage. She was terrified, but she was fighting for you anyway. And I thought about Maya. What kind of example was I setting for her? What would she think if she knew what her father had become? He pulled out his phone and showed us a photo of a young girl with dark curls and a bright smile. That's Maya. She's 12 now. The treatments are working. She's doing well. And I want her to be proud of her dad. So when Sophia offered me a deal, I took it. Not just to save myself, but because it was the right thing to do. The thing I should have done years ago. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Dylan spoke. You're going to testify against all of them? Everyone. Thornfield, the other judges, the cops, the lawyers. I'm giving them everything. And I know it doesn't erase what I did, but maybe it stops them from destroying more innocent people. What happens to you? I asked. Probation, community service. I lose my badge permanently, but I avoid prison, which means I can still be there for Maya. Sophia fought hard to get me that deal. After Moretti left, Dylan and I walked through the neighborhood together. Do you believe him? I asked. I think he's telling the truth about why he did it, but it doesn't make it okay. He still chose to hurt innocent people to protect himself and his daughter. That's not heroism. That's just choosing who you're willing to sacrifice. But he's trying to make it right now. Maybe. Or maybe he's just trying to save himself again. I don't know, Mom. I guess I'm not ready to forgive him yet. That's okay. You don't have to forgive him. You just have to decide if you want to carry the anger. 2 weeks after Thornfield's arrest, the full scope of his corruption became public. The Boston Globe ran a front-page story detailing 17 years of bribery, evidence tampering, and judicial misconduct. They interviewed some of Thornfield's victims, people who'd lost years of their lives to wrongful convictions, people who'd been denied justice because he'd dismissed their cases in exchange for money. Reading those stories broke my heart. But it also made me realize how close Dylan had come to becoming another one of those victims. Another innocent person destroyed by a corrupt system. Morrison, Sterling, and Associates collapsed within 3 weeks. Robert Morrison was arrested for his role in covering up Thornfield's crimes. 14 other attorneys at the firm were under investigation. Dylan's former colleagues called him, some to apologize for not believing in him, others to ask if he knew anything about the investigation into the firm. What are you going to do? I asked him one evening as we sat on my balcony watching the sunset over Boston. Sophia offered me a job, junior prosecutor in her division. I'd be working on public corruption cases. What did you say? I said I'd think about it. Part of me wants to take it, to keep fighting against people like Thornfield. But another part of me wants to go into defense work, help people who've been wrongly accused. I know what that feels like now. You'll figure it out, and whatever you choose, I'll support you. He smiled at me. I know you will. Mom, can I ask you something? Are you okay? I've been so focused on my own stuff that I haven't really asked how you're doing with all this. I thought about it. I'm angry. At Thornfield, at the system that enabled him, at myself for not being more present in your life before this happened. But I'm also grateful. This nightmare brought us closer together. It reminded me what actually matters. Your company is going to be okay? The investigators cleared Westbrook Consulting completely. We had no knowledge of Thornfield's corruption related to the Riverside project. But I've been thinking a lot about the company, about how much of my life I've given to it. I'm considering stepping back, bringing in a CEO to run day-to-day operations while I move into more of an advisory role. Really? Mom, You've never stepped back from anything in your life. Exactly. And look what it almost cost me. I almost lost you, Dylan. I don't want to make that mistake again. 3 months after Thornfield's arrest, the trials began. Moretti testified first, spending 4 days on the stand, detailing everything he'd done and everything he'd witnessed. His testimony was devastating and thorough. He held nothing back, even when it meant admitting to crimes that could have sent him to prison if not for his immunity deal. Thornfield's defense attorney tried to paint Moretti as a liar trying to save himself, but the evidence backed up everything he said. The financial records Dylan had found, the recordings, the testimony of other witnesses, all of it corroborated Moretti's account. When it was Dylan's turn to testify, I sat in the courtroom and watched my son calmly and clearly explain how he'd discovered the corruption, how he'd documented it, and what had happened when he'd tried to report it. The jury listened intently, several of them visibly angry, as Dylan described being arrested on fabricated charges and beaten in detention. Thornfield sat at the defense table, his face expressionless. He'd aged dramatically in 3 months. His perfectly groomed gray hair had gone completely white. He'd lost weight. But what struck me most was that he didn't look remorseful. He looked angry, like he couldn't believe he'd been caught. The trial lasted 6 weeks. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they came back with guilty verdicts on all 47 counts, I watched Thornfield's face finally crack. For just a moment, he looked terrified. Then his mask came back up. The judge sentenced him to 23 years in federal prison. At 62 years old, it was essentially a life sentence. As they led him away, Thornfield looked directly at me. I expected to see hatred or defiance. Instead, I saw something that looked almost like respect. A tiny nod, as if acknowledging that I'd beaten him. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded us. Dylan made a brief statement. Justice was served today, not just for me, but for all of Judge Thornfield's victims. People who lost years of their lives to his corruption. People who were denied justice. People whose cases were dismissed or manipulated. This verdict says that no one is above the law, not even a federal judge. I stood beside him, my hand on his shoulder, proud beyond words. That evening, Lena threw a celebration dinner at her apartment. Dylan was there, along with Sofia Martinez and a few other friends who'd supported us through everything. Even Moretti showed up briefly with his daughter Maya, who was shy but polite. "Thank you for giving my dad a second chance," she said to Dylan. Dylan knelt down to her level. "Your dad did the right thing in the end. That takes courage. You should be proud of him." As I watched them talk, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Not just relief that the nightmare was over, but actual peace. My relationship with Dylan was stronger than it had ever been. My company was thriving under new management that gave me time to actually live my life. I'd learned what truly mattered. 6 months after Thornfield's conviction, Dylan accepted the position with Sophia's office. He moved into a new apartment in Cambridge, one without any memories of that terrible night when police broke down his door. We started a tradition of Sunday dinners together, every single week without exception. Sometimes at my place, sometimes at his, sometimes at restaurants we'd never tried before. We talked about his cases, my consulting projects, politics, movies, everything. We made up for all the conversations we'd missed when I was too busy building an empire. And sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, I thought about how close I'd come to losing him. How Thornfield's corruption had almost destroyed my son's life. How I'd almost made the wrong choice out of fear. But I'd found my courage when it mattered most. I'd fought back, and I'd won. Not because I was smarter or stronger than Thornfield, but because I had something he'd never understood. I had love. Real love, the kind that makes you risk everything to protect the people who matter most. That love had saved us both, and it would guide us through whatever came next.